Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Happy week! We are rolling into the fall, so if you've been living in a part of the country that's just been scorching and burning up, I hope that your temperatures are coming down. And also, it's been a weird 2021, right? We've got our new normal is all of these crazy storms and hurricanes and everything that's whipping up, big floods that we're seeing come to pass on the East Coast. And all of this is interesting phenomenon, sad phenomenon, that I've spoken about years and years ago on this podcast, just looking forward to see what we had in store. So, yeah, there's a lot going on with a lot of climate issue and economic issues right now. People are flipping out because all the free money from the government is going away, and the Biden administration has not yet instituted any grants or loans for the second wave of COVID. We're not shutting down yet. Hold on for that, though. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people struggling with changes in the country. This country used to be a place that was predominantly Caucasian. Lots and lots of white people running around, running everything. And really, you give it very few years, and anybody who's Caucasian in the United States is going to be a minority. And we're going to have much more brown and black people and mixed race people, which makes me really excited. I mean, I'm a mixed, I don't want to say race, yet I am, a typical mutt, an American mutt, made up of people who came over from other European countries. I'm a white American, yet overall, we have such an influx of people and ethnicities. So the world is changing a lot. And whereas we could count on our power grids, now we know we can't count on that, right? And when we look at our political system, which is just hanging on by half a piece of dental floss and some goodwill, our political system is 2 steps from just taking a poop on itself. And I think we're going to pull it together if we just stay focused on love today, folks. Yet, there's a lot going on in the world. We've got Black Lives Matter protests because still in the 21st century in 2021, we have mistreatment of our people of color. We have incredible injustices and inequalities in our country, and that's ruffling the feathers of the old white guys who have held on to the money for all this time and held on to all the power. So we're changing very quickly in America, culturally. We're changing so quickly that for people who've lived a certain, I'll call it the white old guy way, for a really long time, this is very shocking. It's very difficult for them. And a lot of the women, even though they're not men, they're the traditional white women who are expecting their white men to have all the power and et cetera and so on. So between, really just the country evolving, which it's supposed to, by the way, it's supposed to evolve. So we've got this evolving country and people are just falling apart. And then on top of it, you add a global pandemic that so many people don't even believe is actually real. Still, even though we have all kinds of global medical data on it, there are still tons of people that believe COVID is just a little like a bad flu. And I know there's going to be some people listening to this podcast going, oh, Danielle, you poor thing. You've gotten sucked down the fear hole or the mainstream media propaganda hole or the government's trying to control us hole. And you're down this weird avenue where COVID is real to you. And I feel so sorry that you're living in fear. I've gotten a lot of those emails over the last couple of months. And so today's podcast is called Leading with Love in a Looney World because you really couldn't draw a Bugs Bunny cartoon this loony, okay? I just want to share a few things because my inbox is overflowing. I'm not kidding you. It is bursting at the seams with people who are just terrified of what this means in terms of world change with our financial system, our demographic change, our global pandemic issue, and our political climate. People, I'm trying to be really nice about this, gang. I'm trying to be temperate with my words. So if I take a few pauses today, it's because I'm actually trying not to be a complete asshat about this. That doesn't solve anything. That's not leading with love. So my inbox is blowing up on all my social media sites with people asking how to deal with a-holes. I mean, a-holes are everywhere. It's like an Olympic sport in America. Who can be the biggest a-hole? Who can be the least educated? Who can act like a raving loony and get the most Facebook hits? Whose video can go around Twitter or TikTok acting like the most insane person at the airport? I mean, literally, gang. I was talking to my dad the other day on the phone, and my dad is this amazing human being, huge empath, just a brilliant person, dedicated his entire life to helping others. He was a licensed psychotherapist, a social worker. He, again, massive empath, and he's been around for 74 years. And so we were talking about, I asked him, I said, can I ask you, you were around Vietnam era, you were around during Kennedy being shot. Can I ask you what the hell is wrong with everybody at this day and age? And my dad rattled off all of the aforementioned issues that I kind of laid down the foundation for this podcast on. And I found it really fascinating because we got into this big conversation about people going crazy. And my dad has an EDD. He has a doctorate's degree in education, and he teaches doctors, okay? My father teaches doctors bedside manner, or he did. He's retired now. Yet my dad is a professor emeritus at the University of Washington. He's a Fulbright recipient. I mean, he's not a slacker, okay? My dad's pretty awesome. And he is married to a medical doctor, my stepmom, Joan. And so we got into this big discussion about the COVID denial that's out there. And of course, they live out in the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area. That was ground zero for a lot of our outbreaks here in the United States with the first round of COVID. Now it's just everywhere with the Delta variant. Yet it was fascinating to talk with my dad about people just losing their crap. And what could one do about that? You know, I have not been as graceful as I could in some situations with people losing their crap in public at me. Yeah, I've been trying, yet I'll tell you, and I'm being real human and real normal here for everybody because this is about leading with love in a loony world. And we have to remember that we're all human, gang. You know, we're all human beings. And one of the things that my dad and I talked about, and I just want to share some of that conversation with you because it was really stellar. And I sincerely wish that I had recorded the whole conversation, yet I'll give you the cliff notes. One of the things my dad and I talked about was the need to, and these were his words, to beat like butterfly wings, peace into the ethers, so that those ripples can be made, and then I added ripples that can be made in the quantum field of peace. Because, you know, my dad was pointing out that we are in such a rage culture. Outraged, enraged, I'm outraged. I mean, how many times have you been on a political list? I don't care if you're on the right or the left. They both use the same messaging. They just tweak their keywords just a little bit. I think there's like one template for politics, and everybody buys like a subscription to politicalraisingfunds.org, and they all get the same template, and they just, you know, fill in their own keywords and change up their pictures and change the colors from blue to red or red to blue. Anyway, if you'll notice, the political fundraising letters always start with, we are outraged that the Republicans are this or that, or we're outraged that the Democrats are taking away our freedom. We're all outraged. Outrage! Outrage! I'm outraged! Outrage! So Dad and I were talking about the fact that fighting rage with rage just doesn't work. Now, if you follow this podcast, I've been talking about this for years. Yet, I'm going to put a pin in this. Fighting rage with rage doesn't work. I'm going to put a pin in this and throw out some examples, okay? And this has to do with leading with love in a loony world. Love is not just this fluffy, puffy feeling. And I talk about this frequently. I talk about it in interviews. I talk about it on this podcast. I talk about it on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I talk about it on my blog. Love is not just this fun little idea and all the mushy heart romantic feelings and, oh, I see a puppy and my heart is caving in. That's a form of love. Yet love is an energy. It is a force. Okay, so if you're leading with love, you're not only aware of the compassion and the dignity and the grace, the decorum and the empathy and the love and the unconditionality of that energy signature. You're also aware of its strength. Okay, love is strong. When a mom gets into a car accident with her toddler in the back seat and her car goes rolling off the highway, big old 2-ton pickup truck, and her son is thrown out the window and the truck pins the child, that mother, due to the love that is running through her body, jumps out of that car, and love infects her just like the bite of a radioactive spider infected Spider-Man. And she becomes a superhero. And the power of love allows her to lift a 2-ton truck off of her toddler. Okay? That is the power of love. It is strength. A father who's noting that his children are in a trapped situation in a bedroom as his house is on fire is not necessarily waiting for that fire department to get there. That father's love is so great that even though he's barefoot and he's just wearing pajama bottoms and bare-chested, he runs straight into that fire to go save his children. That's the power of love. Love is a disruptor. Love is a massive disruptor. It's an interrupter. If there's something that is compromising the safety of the many, love steps in and takes the weight off. It diffuses the conflict. It is a firewall for peace, okay? And we can all be a firewall for love and peace, and that's part of leading with love. So this brings me to a story that I had to drop my mom off at a doctor's appointment. And my little baby mama, my little Italian baby mama, when my mom was young, she was the health food lady in the 70s. I never got sugared cereal as a kid. I never did. I wanted it. Other kids got Lucky Charms and Cocoa Puffs. I got granola. I got oatmeal with, organic maple syrup poured all over it. And of course, we think that's amazing in 2021. But when you're a kid growing up in the 70s, you feel like you're locked in a gulag. I mean, that just sucks, man. Everybody else gets cheese food, licorice, and tater tots. And God, there I was with my health food milkshakes. And I'm grateful to my mom for that. I really am. I think it's really set up my metabolism for later in life. However, my mom's health over the years has, gotten sketchier as we get older and all the things. So my mom has a handicap sticker. She's able to get around, but she really can't walk well big, long distances. She actually earned the sticker, sadly. So she's got a handicap placard up in her car. And so I'm driving her to an appointment at the hospital, just a routine thing, no biggie. And I drop her off at the front door because, of course, it's COVID, so there's no parking anywhere, even close to the hospital. And I go to find, a parking place. So I drive through one very packed lot, but, door to door, nothing. I drive through another lot, nothing. I get into this other lot, and just as I drive in, the lot's empty. I mean, it's just me and all of these parked cars. There's nobody else in this lot. There's a car that turns its backup lights on. So I signal, right? And I'm waiting for this car to come out. And I was probably there a good 10, 15 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, because the people had just gotten in the car. So they're getting all their stuff together. And they were an older couple, so they're not Speedy Gonzalez here. And I'm waiting, right? I've got my blinker on, even though it's stupid to have the blinker on because there's nobody else in this parking lot, but it's a habit from LA. So I've got this blinker on in Billings, Montana. And this car slowly starts to back out. Well, as I'm waiting, I notice that a car pulls into my lane of the parking lot, right? And I'm in their lane because I'm waiting to pull in to the right. So this car pulls in, and the woman driving, I can see her clearly. It's in the morning, so I don't have my sunglasses on. We make eye contact. She's not that far away. She drives up, and she's looking at the car parking out or pulling out, and she looks at me and starts gesturing at this car that's pulling out. My blinker's on, mind you. And she puts her blinker on as she's gesturing, and she's mouthing through the window, "I was here first." And I'm like, wow, lady. Wow, you are off your nut. And I kind of squinted because I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And she is literally pointing at the car, and at the space, and she's pulling forward and she's mouthing over and over, "I was here first. I was here first." Well, I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor lady probably has a problem or something. And I mean, she clearly saw me. I could see her eyes dart down. She looked at my blinker. She turned her head and looked at the car pulling out. She made the choice to put her blinker on. I watched it happen on her face, gang. Okay. And I could feel it happening in her brain because I'm wired the way that I am. So I'm fascinated by this. And I'm just kind of ignoring her at this point because I'm thinking, God, this poor woman, what a nutter. Okay. Whatever. Well, in Montana, we are a very civil culture. You have to understand this. We don't do things like rush people for parking spots or push people out of the way in lines. I mean, there's a little over 1 million of us in the entire state, in the 4th largest state in the union. So we are a little chill with people, and we're polite with people because there's not many of us out here. And you're talking to a person, not a sheep or a cow, and that's novel, right? Because we really are outnumbered by cows and sheep in this state. So, we've also had a huge influx in Montana of people who have moved here who are COVID refugees. They've come here from other larger states. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. Lots of folks coming in from New York, California, Washington State, Oregon. And a lot of these folks not all of them, but tend to be of a more conservative mindset. They didn't like the COVID rules in these other states. So this woman is pulling up, and I'm reminded of the weird crap that used to happen when I lived in LA and had to duke it out in the parking lot of the freaking Trader Joe's, man. There was this Trader Joe's in the valley in LA, and I don't know what the hell the deal was with that parking lot. Like, you would pull in, and people would literally just inhale some kind of Trader Joe's pheromone and become insane and be rushing people for parking spots and in their Prius, and they're going to get their organic food and acting like a raging asshat. Anyway, that's what this reminded me of. So this lady keeps gesturing, I was here first. And I'm just shaking my head at her like, okay, whatever. Well, as this person is backing up, she starts edging her car forward. So I start edging my car forward. You know that game, right? And you're going for the same parking space. And this whole time, I am completely aware that this woman knew good God dang and well she was not there first, and she was just trying to rush into this spot. I'm just like, what the hell? Well, I'm actually a creepy good driver, and I think that had my eyesight not been as sketchy as it was when I was a younger person, I probably would have been a Navy pilot or a race car driver or something, because I can gauge velocity, right? So we're both rushing for this parking space, and this poor guy is trying to back up to get out, and she's got him pinned in. So I'm backing up so he can get out. Plus, it gives me a better, angle at the parking spot. Anyway, the guy drives off. She goes gunning it for the parking space, and I literally just punch it. I punch it and just whip in front of this woman, and she just slams on the brakes. And she's just dead startled that I did this. And I'm driving my mom's car. I have a handicap sticker on it. Okay? So I've got this lady in a delusion, claiming she was there first, rushing a person driving a car with a handicap sticker. Now I'm just getting more and more pissed off about this. My ire is starting to rise. I'm like, okay. So I look at this woman who is still just sitting there. Like, she didn't back up. She clearly cannot get into the parking place. I'm in the space almost entirely. And she's just sitting there. And I turn to her and I look at her and I mouth, because at that point, she almost just T-boned my car. I mouth to her, "What the F?" I'm like, come on, man, this is insane. So then, of course, she gives me the most insane, wide-eyeballed, worthy of South Park flip-off through her window, which then made me really irritated. We're talking about leading with love, right? So here is leading with love. I'll finish this story and then tell you why it's leading with love. So I rolled the window down and I'm so hacked off. And at this point, I've just had it. I've had it with this woman's delusion. I've had it with her bullying. I've had it with the fact that for all she knows, I'm severely handicapped and I'm way far away in this parking lot from anything. And I couldn't park in any of the handicap spots at the hospital because regular cars were parked there with their hazards on, just parked there. So I'm like, okay, it's COVID, whatever. Great. Okay. Luckily, I'm not handicapped and could walk. So I roll the window down after this woman gives me the giant flip off. And she's got that energy like, oh no, she's crazy. And I'm thinking, well, I'm crazy now, honey. I was actually okay, but now you done pissed me off. So we're done. So I roll the window down and I lean out the window, like my shoulder, my whole left arm, like a frickin' Bronx cab driver. I am flailing like an Italian tornado with this woman. Hand gestures. I didn't flip her off, but lots of hand gestures. And I say in my loudest singer voice, I've got quite a voice that can project, right? And I'm so angry. And this energy just flies through her windshield. And I yell at the top of my lungs, "I was here first, ma'am." But it was screaming. And I said, "Chill the frick out." And now I actually said frick. I hung on that F forever and I wanted to just pound her in the head with the F-bomb. But what came out was freak out. It's like I had some sensor in my head for the Federal Communications Committee that was just like, you can't say that. And they just sort of replaced the word with freaking, which was fine. But I told her to chill the freak out. And as soon as she got hit with this wall of energy, this woman just looked at me and just kind of shook her head like, oh, this doesn't matter anyway. Fact was, I scared the crap out of her. And she backed right up and she left. And I pulled in that parking lot and my heart rate was about 2 million. I get out of the car. I'm walking to the car. I'm watching her car because I don't want her to come back and damage my parents' car. And I think I had probably a pretty satanic look on my face at that point. I was just so pissed. But the thing that made me so angry, gang, was that this woman was a giant bully. She was a bully. And obviously she had made a lifestyle out of treating people like this. Now, that isn't an assumption. I watched her do it to me. For all she knew, I was handicapped. And also I did a little checking around in her brain and the energy field like I do. And this was just who she was. And she came in from a bigger city. She was from that LA Basin area, as her angels told me, because I was like, where is she from? Hell? What's the deal with this lady? And, and honestly, gang, had she rolled down her window and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. My son is in the emergency room. He just had a seizure. I'm so freaked out. Would you mind if I took this parking place? I'm so sorry. I would have said, sure, take it. Take the space. I wouldn't have cared. But we're all in a hurry going to the hospital. So why did I tell you this story? Because we're talking about leading with love. So I'd posted this story on Facebook. And I had a couple people pop on there and say, well, I disagree with you. You're supposed to lead with love. You have so much more power than this person, which was a legit comment. And I just don't understand, did you gloat when you were walking back to the hospital? Or, I just think you could have handled that differently. And maybe I could have. Yet the way that I could have handled it was just to let her take this parking spot. And the point of this podcast is, how do we lead with love? In a United States of America that has, especially over the last 5 years, it's always been part of our culture. Yet we've bred a culture of bullies. We've bred a culture of abusers. We've allowed bullying and abusers and narcissists to come forward en masse in the United States. And these folks have been testing the waters for a long time, especially the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years. So when we lead with love, I didn't do anything to this woman. And I pointed out to the folks who were unhappy with my story. I thought my story was kind of funny, but apparently it offended some people who felt like I wasn't loving enough to this lady. Well, here's the deal about love. There's a time to be loving and there's a time to go all Roma Downey on Touched by an Angel. God loves you. Oh, lady in the car, I see you're very upset today. Perhaps your kitten's died on the way to the hospital. God loves your bullying ass. God just takes you in his arms and says, I'm so sorry that you're an asshat, but God loves you all the same. Let me hug you while you ram my mama's car right into oblivion, while you knock her handicap sticker right off the mirror. Oh, God loves you with your face all red, swearing at me through your windshield. Oh, God loves you so. Yeah, there's a time to be that person, and there's a time without causing physical damage, gang, okay? But there's a time to be the emotional Tawanda lady. Remember the film where Kathy Bates played the employee and she'd been driving around the parking lot forever trying to find a parking place, and she finally found it and she'd been having a crap life, and these young girls just flip in there, they cut her off and they pull in a Volkswagen Beetle and they get out and they're like, we're young and cute and you're just slow and too bad, lady. And Kathy Bates' character snaps, and of course she goes a little overboard. She starts ramming their car, just ramming it and ramming it and ramming it. And they come back out and they're like, you're crazy. And she says, girls, I've got the better insurance. And off she goes. Now, I'm not suggesting you ram a car, of course. That's a little over the top. And actually, in today's day and age, quite frankly, somebody could probably pull a gun on you and shoot you right in the head for doing that. So it's not a good idea in any way, shape, or form. However, some people only speak to Wanda, okay? Now, in this situation that I told you about, I did drop the F-bomb when I mouthed through the window at the lady, what the F, because I was wondering why she was going to ram my car. That was weird. However, I was responding to her bullying, okay? And I just didn't back down. That's all I just didn't back down. And I guarantee you, even if I didn't what the F her through the window, when I got out, she was sitting right there and she was ready to yell at me and do whatever she was going to do. So I kind of cut that right off at the pass. Yeah, I was responding to her bullying. And it was fascinating, some of the responses to this story. Most of the responses on Facebook were like, well, you go, girl. And I really was not posting it for the pat on the back. I didn't feel good after this encounter. I felt gross. I literally screamed particle matter through the glass and impaled this woman with energy of disdain. I mean, I didn't feel good about that later. I felt good about standing my ground. I didn't feel good about the exchange just because it was icky. Whenever you get into that situation, you don't generally feel great afterwards. Yet it was surprising to me how many people expected me to just back down. Well, it's not a big deal. Just give her the parking spot. Lead with love. How come you just didn't give her the parking spot? That's not leading with love. Letting someone bully you into giving them what they want is called being a victim. That's being a victim. I'm not really a victim-y person. I'm not an ass hat generally, but I'm not a victim-y person. So, we think that leading with love is just giving away the farm. And listen, do hear me when I say this. There is a time to just let things go, okay? And I let a ton of stuff go. I'm sure you do too. There's a time to be the bigger person. There's a time to take the high road. There's a time to just not engage the insanity. And really, if we can do that more often than not, we're in a pretty good place. Yet once in a while, the universe is going to give us an emotional Tawanda situation. And again, I'm going to be really clear. Hurting another person is not okay. Damaging their property is not okay. Verbally abusing another person is not okay in your Tawanda moment. Yet all of us in this time frame are going to be presented at some time or another with a situation where we either stand up for ourselves in a dignified, calm, and rational way, or we just get rolled over the top of by all the bullies that are coming out of the woodwork in their fear and desperation, which is what I started the podcast with. Definitions of why people are so afraid. And this is a really hard concept for a lot of people. And believe me, gang, I will always try to take the peaceful way out. I will always try to diffuse a situation with humor. I'll try to make everybody feel at ease. I sometimes will shoulder something that's not even mine to shoulder because I'm an empath and I don't like the fact that the other person is suffering, and it's selfish on my part to want them to feel better. So I just, take it in the shorts and keep going because it's not that big of a deal to me. I don't really care. Yet what presented itself in that moment in that parking lot was some necessity on my end, because the hospital was so overrun with COVID patients. We were running, not late, but we were going to be late if I didn't get my mom dropped off and get the car parked. And with the way that the hospitals are overflowing in Billings, you're pretty lucky to get a doctor's appointment, period. Now, granted, my mom was in a particular department that wasn't dealing with respiratory per se. However, it's still hard to get in. So I didn't want to blow the appointment. I had a place to get to. And there was one parking space that I had been waiting for. Now, when we stand up to a bully, it's not a good feeling. We're wondering if we're doing the right thing. Well, I knew I was doing the right thing. I felt a little weird afterwards because I'm not used to yelling at people. However, you and I and everybody on this planet are going to be asked to have a level-headed Tawanda moment with people who have lost their ability to create boundaries for themselves. Now, I am not suggesting that we all go out and die on every hill of every parking lot. You will wear yourself out. That's ridiculous. And again, if you use your intuitive abilities, you're going to understand sometimes it just give the person the parking space. If it was an older person, I would have given them the parking space in a flat minute. I would have. Even if they pulled the exact same thing, I would have given them that parking space. This lady was just a jerk, and I was not in the mood to kowtow to a jerk. So the reason I'm telling this story is because I noticed that it did surprise a lot of people that the Lead with Love lady would hang out the window and yell through somebody's windshield, "I was here first, ma'am, chill the freak out." Which actually I thought was a very calm response. There were a lot of other things that went through my head. I mean, I used to front a band, you guys. Gang, I used to do stand-up comedy. I've got some really acidic things that go through my brain that will just lance somebody right in half that I don't say. Because why say that? Why? Why say that? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So again, you got to use your head. You got to have some decorum. You got to have dignity. There's no need to be abusive about it. Yet standing your ground in this time frame, respectfully, teaches others that it's not okay to bully and roll over the top of everybody else to get what they want. And I could tell, I am a psychic. I could tell in this woman's energy field. I was asking her angels, is she mentally ill? Is there something wrong with her? And they're like, well, she's grumpy. That's about what's wrong with her. They didn't quite say that, but that was the gist. But I could tell that this woman, when moving to Montana, realized that we were all just a bunch of patsies by her mind. We just rolled over and died. We were easy. We were shooting fish in a barrel with a shotgun for this bully. And I'm like, God, I wonder how many, I was here first. I wonder how many people that's worked before on. And I thought, well, honey, I'm the wrong girl, wrong day. I lived 11 years in LA and used to shop at that freaking possessed Trader Joe's. Anybody here from the LA Valley area or has lived there? Do you know what Trader Joe's I'm talking about? It's the one in the valley that's God, I'm blanking out on the crossroads, but it's the one by the bank over there. God, crazy people. I don't know what there's a gas leak over there or a soul leak or I don't know. The devil just made a vortex just to watch what people do when they go to Trader Joe's. It's a reality TV show. So we're all going to be asked to step forward to interrupt a cycle or to be a disruptor in a cycle that could potentially harm others. Now, obviously, in this day and age, especially in Montana, you got to be careful. People are over the line right now. They are over the edge. And Montana is a conceal and carry state. And one of the things I did is I was edging the nose of my car up and she and I were going to play rush for the parking spot. One of the things I did was scan her car, psychically, of course, for a firearm. Because I thought, you know what? I'm not going to mess with this woman if she's that crazy and is going to blow my face off with a shotgun. Because that happens sometimes out here. So I'm just like, she doesn't have a gun. She's just grumpy. All right, whatever. So of course you've got to be discerning, gang. We all do. Yet part of being loving is not being so lazy with our sociological obligations. What am I talking about? Well, you know, the old American, I can't get involved. I don't want to handle this. This is just not something I want to deal with. And a lot of times anymore, like I said, you can't die on every single hill of every single asshat or we'd all be dead 40 times a day. Yet I think you know what I'm talking about. There comes a time when the universe is going to put us all in a position to disrupt a cycle of abuse, to disrupt a behavior that's not working. Somebody is over the line for whatever reason. And I am somebody with an enormous sense of compassion. Yet what I'm noting is so many people are giving themselves a license to just lose their crap on others in public. And just as my dad was talking about being a butterfly who beats its wings for peace, and those ripples go into the cosmic field, go into the quantum field and create peace, so do the people who beat their wings for rage and anger. It goes out and it creates ripples of rage and anger. And we can diffuse that by not meeting it with rage and anger. I mean, I yelled at this lady and I was mad, but I wasn't in a rage. And I chose my words intellectually. Well, chill the freak out was the best I could do. I'm sorry, I'm not Hemingway. However, we're going to be asked in this time frame to step up in a way that disrupts chaos. And that is leading with love. And especially if you do it in a way that is forceful, just to disrupt the rageful energy, yet also that loving firewall of this nonsense is not going to pass here, we begin to build back society. And again, you got to be a little careful because there's some real nutters out there. Yet I think you understand what I'm saying. What I'm trying to do is impart the concept that love is a disruptor as well. It is a disruptor with decorum, yet it is a strong disruptor. And at some point, leading with love is not just about the high road and turning the other cheek. So here's something that you might find interesting about that saying, turning the other cheek. So we have heard this saying. It comes from the Bible, the Christian Bible, and it's part of a sermon that Jesus was giving. And he's talking about if somebody wrongs you, if they do something bad to you, turn the other cheek to them. Now, our modern churches have taken turn the other cheek to mean lay down and die, do what the bully wants you to do. It's okay if you're beaten up on earth because God will love you in heaven. God loves you. God will love you in heaven. Okay, that's just great. Sorry you got pummeled on earth, but God will love you in heaven. This is what our churches turn your other cheek into. They turned it into take the high road. That's not actually what it means. And for those of you that have followed my work for a long time, followed this podcast for a long time, you know that I've got a background in Judeo-Christian studies. I do a lot of interdenominational and outside-the-box ministry work. And one of the things I love to do is look at the words in the Bible, look at the original interpretations and cultural ramifications of those words, and see if that's actually congruent with what churches are teaching. And oftentimes it's not. It's not. As an example, I'm sure you've heard, if you're anywhere growing up, if you're somebody who had to go to Sunday school or had Christian friends or have really evangelical friends, that whole Jesus moment where he says, I am the truth, the light, and the way. And everybody says that, well, you have to, give your life to Christ and you have to be saved in order to go to heaven. Like going and buying a magical t-shirt. And if you get the magical t-shirt at a discount, then it gets you right into heaven. It's like a wristband. It gets you into the beer garden. Only it's the Jesus Salvation Hut, right? But actually, if you look at the High Greek in which the Old Testament was actually written in, not conversational Greek, High Greek, which was allegorical and relied on a lot of equivalences, I can't even say it, in context with the rest of a sentence. I am the truth, the light, and the way. The way meant I am the truth, the light, and the example for how you get to heaven. The example, like do what I do to get there, not I am the way, go buy my swag and get the wristband to get into the Jesus beer garden. I want into the Jesus beer garden. I hope he has a lot of dark beer. I think Jesus would drink dark beer. Anyway, so words, right? Words are huge. So are the cultural attributes of the Bible. So when you hear turn the other cheek, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't just mean take the high road. Here's a little known fact about Middle Eastern culture, especially during Jesus' time, that you may not know. Back in the day, and still in the Middle Eastern parts of the world and many parts of those regions, one eats with their right hand and one wipes their butt with their left hand. It's not like Jesus could just run out to the corner of Flying G and get himself some Charmin while he was wandering across the desert and throwing the Charmin at those apostles saying, hey, put this somewhere next to the lentils, could you? Don't get lentils in the toilet paper. So you eat with your right hand and you wipe your butt with the left, which means all the business is done with your right hand. We also are unaware in the West that to strike a person in the face, to slap a person in the face who is your social equal in the Middle East, if you're to slap them, open-handed, that is a respectful thing to do. Slap them open-palmed, that you are showing them the respect of your disdain. If you backhand them with your knuckles, then you are dishonoring them. Now, if they are your equal or your greater societally, and you backhand that person, you dishonor yourself. Okay? Are you following? So when Jesus said, if you have an enemy that wrongs you, turn the other cheek, he's meaning you're going to give them two choices. If you turn the other cheek, they've already hit you once open-palmed, let's just say, right? You turn the other cheek. They can't use their left hand to hit you open-palmed because the big no-no was touching anyone or doing anything with that left hand that wiped your butt. So literally, you were not to touch humans with that, especially with that left hand. So if you turn the other cheek, I can hit you open-palmed, but I have to do it with my left hand, which means I violate Jewish law, which was way worse than just demeaning yourself. So if I turn the other cheek, you're forcing somebody to violate the law, or my other choice is to backhand them and demean myself. So turn the other cheek says, you know what? Just give that fool about 100 yards of rope and point him to a tall tree and let him go for it themselves. That's what turn the other cheek means. It doesn't mean take bullying, take abuse, be treated like crap. That was propagated from the 1200s on by white European kings who took that passage and wanted serfs and servants and very poor and dying and starving people to feel great about rotting in the street. Because when they got to heaven, they were going to get it all. But now Jesus just wants them to turn the other cheek. Don't revolt against your king who Christ himself put on the throne. I mean, talk about narcissism running amok. So when we're looking at leading with love, we have a lot of confusing ideologies about what doing that means. Let's go back to this Jesus guy, since we're on the Jesus rant here. Jesus who drinks dark beer, hopefully. I think he does. Let's go back to Jesus' beer garden, okay? So Jesus, who is oftentimes the walking, talking visual aid for compassion, transcendence, dignity, higher thought, spiritual teachings, elevated and transcendent mannerisms in spiritual physics, turning water into wine and loaves and fishes, expanding out of nowhere. Jesus, that guy in the beer garden. You know, Jesus was a firewall for love. Jesus, the guy who we all like to think of, what would Jesus do? Well, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do if Jesus was encountering this elevated spirit teacher? And you don't have to be Christian to actually really resonate with this particular example, quite frankly. Jesus was a great spiritual teacher like the Buddhas and many other Hindi teachers and Muslim teachers. So here's this elevated person, here's this Yoda, who generally leads with love. And what would Jesus do? WWJD in 2021. Well, it depends on the situation. Because Jesus kind of freaked out on the money changers at the temple. And you were supposed to go to temple and worship God and all the things. Well, people realized that people would show up and need sacrifices. They'd forget them. So they would sell animals and they would sell trinkets and they would sell prayer shawls and all the goodies outside of the beer garden. And the temple was supposed to simply be a place to go commune with God. Well, it got a little ridiculous and a little carnivalish and a little Kardashian. And Jesus freaked out and started just flinging over tables and throwing tables and money everywhere and merch right out into the street. And of course, the vendors were flipping out and diving for their coins. And Jesus was pissed because these folks were capitalizing on others' need to simply spiritually commune. And they were making it difficult to get into the temple. And he'd had it because that wasn't the point of spirituality. Buying your way to heaven wasn't the way to do it. Never has been the way to do it. So Jesus wigged and literally destroyed property and then called all of these spirit teachers and these vendors and a lot of the Sanhedrin, who were also peddling wares. And Sanhedrin were the big religious council of the day. They're like our evangelical right now, or like our secret cabal, right-wing, super PAC, crazy Handmaid's Tale people. That was politically, that was the Sanhedrin back in the day in the Jewish community. And actually, I think our people now are worse than they were, but let me just put that out there. Anyway, so Jesus had it and called them a brood of vipers. You brood of vipers, Jesus said. Now, we don't really think much about that in today's world. We're like, hey, call them a bunch of snakes. Well, duh, they're a bunch of snakes. However, you have to understand, again, the cultural ramifications. Jesus was a firewall for love. Jesus was leading with love. Now, he kind of lost his crap. He was probably tired of all the stupid people not understanding what he was saying. I don't blame the guy. He might have been drunk on dark beer. We don't know. We weren't there. However, he interrupted a cycle of abuse. He disrupted something that was interrupting people's flow. Again, I'm not telling you to go disrupt property or go to the mall and trash somebody's store because you disagree with them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm using Jesus as an example of leading with love and being that firewall for peace and love. And when he called him a viper's brood, back in the day, you have to remember culturally that a snake was the devil. A snake was what tempted Eve in the Torah. A snake was not just a, hey, you snake. I mean, it was a bad thing. And to call him, he basically called him a brood of demons, which was literally the equivalent of looking right at the Pope and getting right in the Pope's face and saying, you mother effer, and just losing your mind at the Pope. So, of course, they were a little shocked and geez, this disruptor, this brown-skinned, homeless weirdo who needs a bath, doesn't have a penny to his name, comes in, throws all these tables out here, clearing the way for the people with no money to actually get into the temple. It was a disruptive force. Now, I am not saying that we need to go and mob rule and get our pitchforks and our lanterns and go break out windows in a mob and burn down buildings in a protest. That's not what I'm saying. That's not going to fix anything. Because as my dad and I were discussing, you cannot fight rage with rage. Okay? And you just can't. Yet sometimes love is a disruptor. It disrupts, and then it brings healing. Now, I didn't really bring much healing to this lady in the parking lot. I did bring resolution to tell her, to reaffirm that I was there first. And I knew she knew that. I knew she knew that. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't mentally ill. She was just a jerk. So as soon as she recognized I wasn't going to play, she got a little intimidated and shook her head and just kind of drove off. So when we look at this, and we look at the fact that we're going to be called at some point in this day and age to disrupt an energy signature, that gets intimidating. Because I don't know about you, but I prefer to be the peace, love, and harmony lady. You know why? Because it's easier. It's my nature. Secondly, let's get real gritty here. Especially if you're female, people like the peace, love, and harmony lady. And we all want to be liked. We want everybody to think, I want everybody to think Danielle Egnew is the happy lady who brings angel messages and she's just all about the love. And that's actually true. Yet Danielle Egnew is also not going to sit there and get bullied and roll over and die when someone can learn a valuable lesson about being someone who is also part of the human experience down here. I'm not saying I'm the teacher of the world. You're not the teacher of the world. None of us are. Yet if we shirk our sociological duties in this time frame, if we don't calmly and rationally and peacefully hold a line for what is decent, because we don't want to be disliked or somebody's going to be mad at us or, oh my God, we might as well just paint a V on our chest and start the victim club and let all of these insane nutcrackers have the world. And we can just all go hide in the mountains and just be our peace, love, and harmony selves while they just ram into each other in the parking lot, which actually sort of sounds appealing at this point in time. However, leading with love is, of course, just being as decent and as calm as you can. Yet what about situations online? It's so funny. Over the last 48 hours, I've had a number of people hit me up on Facebook and through my Instagram account and whatnot, through direct messages, asking, what do you do if somebody pops on your social media page and all they do is flame at you? They troll you. All they do is argue. That's all they do. And you post something you're really proud of and you're freaked out that this person is going to jump on and say something. I've got a few of those people in my life too. Some of them are actually in my family. And as Trump has gone by the wayside, some of those folks have chilled out a great deal. However, gang, we don't do anybody any service by allowing our social media pages to become a billboard for somebody else's bullying and abuse. It gives them a voice. It gives them attention. And none of us want to be the person who blocks somebody just because they said something stupid. I'm talking about somebody who constantly posts. Gang, I'm not talking about like if your brother-in-law says something stupid once or twice. I'm not talking about that. I think you understand that. I'm talking about the person that really the only time you hear from them is for them to say something demeaning or nasty or correcting you. And in my case, on my Facebook page, I used to have a lot of males that would do that, white males of a certain age would love to come on and correct me and tell me what an idiot I was. And all the shaming tactics that they were shamed with, they would turn them on me because I'm a female. So to them, I'm a safe person to do that with. God help them. God. She looks calm, but don't try to take her parking place. Gah. So when we're encountered with these opportunities to be a firewall for decency, take them. We don't have the luxury of just walking off and hoping someone else handles it. Now, obviously, I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. Don't put yourself in harm's way, seriously. Assess the situation. Yet you'll feel love swell up in your chest when you are called and compelled by the universe to disrupt a situation. You will literally feel called into it. It may feel like a rush of courage. It may feel like a rush of indignance and courage and a little anger and a little needing to protect somebody. Yet you will feel it in your chest. It comes through the heart chakra. It doesn't come through the head. It doesn't come through the stomach. It comes through the heart chakra. That's what pushes you forward. And how many times have we had somebody say on Facebook, Facebook is the middle-age America pen where very sad humans go to throw up and die. I mean, it's really become this middle-aged wasteland over there of people belly aching about how terrible their life is. So I try to put uplifting things in there to just kind of lighten the load a little. However, Gen X and above are the people who love to rant and rave and rage in writing online because we feel like we have a platform for it. And those platforms didn't exist when we were younger. So if you have somebody in your life who's coming on any social media page and all they're doing is attacking and flaming or whatever, and the only time you ever hear from them is when they do that, block that person. I know it feels weird, especially if you know them in real life, because they're going to be like, did you block me on Facebook? And you can just be like, yeah, I love you, man. You just can't seem to keep your bubble between the lines, and it just gets stupid. And that's not who I know you as, and that's not who you know me as. So I just figured I'd take temptation away because, I think it's giving people the wrong idea about who you are, and I just don't appreciate that energy on my page. So let's just take it out of the mix, man, and go get beers. Who cares? Yet we've got to have the courage to do that. We've got to have the courage to face down bullies. Because I'll tell you about human beings. We humans are affected deeply by what we see when what we see repeats itself. We are beyond monkey see, monkey do. We are monkey see, and monkey creates its entire universe out of what it sees. So if we're allowing people to come on and just be god-awful on our social media pages, and we're allowing that to happen, and we're not removing those comments, and people are seeing this raging grossness all the time, they get discouraged. And they start to think, God, what's the point of putting a picture up of my son in a costume when all of a sudden I have a bunch of people yelling at him about what type of costume he has on? Now, I'm not suggesting you need to be a censorship Nazi. However, keep in mind, you're a private person, okay? You're not the New York Times. You are not the Washington Post. You're not the Bloomberg Report. You are not required to have to host public commentary across the board because it's upholding their freedom of speech. You're a private person. Your world gets to be how you want to design it, okay? And a bully and a narcissist will get in your face and tell you that you're weak, you're a sheep, you can't handle other opinions, America's going to hell and you're the problem. Bullies and narcissists collapse when they don't have an audience anymore. So they'll try to shame you into staying there and taking their garbage. And I have literally gotten to the point on some of my social media pages where I'll say to somebody, hey, I need you to stop spreading misinformation. If you continue to spread it, I'm going to delete it. And they just, people are down their own rabbit holes of what the hell these days. Generally, that person is just going to keep going and keep going and keep going because you have to remember that belief for many people at this time, belief that COVID isn't real, belief that the vaccines will kill you, which they won't. And if anybody here is listening and afraid that the vaccine is going to change your DNA, it does not. The vaccine teaches your cells what the RNA of the COVID virus looks like so that your cells do not attach themselves to the virus. Your cells don't allow that RNA bridge to happen from the virus, and the virus just passes through the body. The COVID vaccine will not alter your DNA. There's a metaphysical myth out there that if you take the COVID vaccine, it'll change your DNA and you won't be able to ascend to the 5th and 7th and 9th dimensions. That is untrue. 5th and 9th and 7th dimension ascension happens spiritually first, and we've got to take a very healthy body with us. And if our body is sick, it makes it hard to ascend. So not that you can't ascend if you're sick, don't get me wrong. Yet the vaccine is not going to keep you from ascending. It doesn't change your DNA. There's a popular myth out there that says, no, 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 no. This is true. Gang, it's not true. I talk to angels all day. I ask them, I said, does this inhibit a person's vibration to the point that they cannot ascend with our current ascension process? And these angels looked at me like I had asked them if Barney the dinosaur was responsible for all of Julia Child's recipes. They just looked at me like, I don't even know where that came from or what you're talking about. But no, the answer is no. So, and I'm not belittling anybody whose belief system would take them in this direction. Just know, if you don't want to get the vaccine, just don't get it, okay? But please admit to yourself, I'm not getting it because I don't want it, I don't trust it, and I'm afraid of it, period. But it's not going to change your DNA. It's not going to infect you with COVID until your antibodies come forward. That would kill you because our bodies don't know how to build antibodies to COVID yet. So I'm just telling you all these things because there are people who aren't getting the vaccine because they really, really, truly believe with all their hearts it's going to turn them into reptilians, that it's going to chip you, that it's going to kill you in 5 years. These are all, with the exception of the reptilian thing, the kill you in 5 years, that went around with some people who were freaking out about the polio vaccine or the measles vaccine. And I'm so glad that society used to have common sense and took the polio and the measles and the mumps and the rubella and all of those mandatory vaccines that we had to take before we went to school. I have a scar in my arm from them. I am so glad that my parents vaccinated me. And I understand there's a lot of schools of thought that are anti-vax or let's not, pound our kids with vaccines right out the gate. And I can see spacing the vaccines out for sure. We don't want to overwhelm those little bodies. Yet we have science for a reason, gang. And science and spirituality, physics and spirituality are right there. Science is some of the places where transfiguration happens at a cellular level. That's Jesus stuff, okay? That's miracle stuff. So this isn't a podcast about whether you get vaxxed or not. It's a podcast about stopping misinformation. It's a podcast about standing up for love. It's a podcast about interrupting bullying. And we all are going to be asked to do that at some point. Maybe it's in a grocery store line behind somebody who's freaking out on the checker and they're in a rage and they can't control themselves anymore because their life has pushed them to that point. What can you do if you're compelled? Sometimes you're like, oh, stay away from that cray nutter. Woo, okay. But you'll feel it in your chest. And if you feel it in your chest, respond calmly, respond firmly, respond without fear. Because rage is caused by fear. Outrage is caused by fear of there never being any other way out of a situation. So don't match it with fear. Match it with strength. Match it with firewalls of love. Imagine yourself as Gandalf the Grey. In that scene in Lord of the Rings where they're running through the catacombs and this demon, they had to go underground to cut through a mountain, and this demon is coming out of the mountain. And it's running up to them. And Gandalf sends all the little hobbits along the way, and he's standing on that really narrow stone bridge. It's just really, really narrow. And here comes this demon barreling down, and, and it's scary, and it's made of fire. And Gandalf takes his staff, Gandalf the Grey. This is before he's Gandalf the White. Gandalf the Grey takes his staff, and he just stands there. He is a firewall for love. And he puts that staff in the air. And I love this. My favorite quote out of any movie. You shall not pass! And he slams his staff down and, of course, breaks this tiny little stone bridge. And the demon falls to its death. And at the last minute grabs Gandalf and takes him with him. But then, Gandalf just resurrects into Gandalf the White. Which is an analogy that if we do the right things for the right reasons, if we do them out of love, if we interrupt chaos safely in today's day and age, then we transcend as well. We become stronger, better people. We can also see in that person who's losing their crap parts of us when we've lost our crap. It teaches us by dealing with someone who's losing their crap. It teaches us how to not lose our own crap because we look like that. They then become our teacher. So reach deep, lead with love in this time frame. And remember that love is all those beautiful things, taking the high road, not getting into any argument, letting things slide. Really honestly, decorum, kindness, compassion. Yet sometimes love is the Gandalf. Sometimes love is the Jesus in the temple turning over those tables. Sometimes love is the person in the parking lot saying, no, actually, you weren't here first. The underlying message there of stop acting like this. We're each other's teachers, gang. And none of us want to be disliked. None of us want to do that hard, gross work that makes your heart race. Just as a postscript to that story about the lady in the parking lot, it probably took me a good 20 minutes to calm down. And of course, I'm a female. I'm an empath. I was raised in America to be a pleaser. So I had to sit there and I told my mom what happened and I reviewed it in my head over and over again. And even though I knew I did the right thing, I knew I had a right to stand up for myself. I knew this woman wasn't mentally ill or needing to run into her sick or dying parent. I knew all these things. I still felt guilty. I reviewed it in my head like, oh God, did I do something wrong? God, I hope I didn't do something wrong. I hope I didn't miscall this. Because especially ladies, we've been taught that if you stand up for yourself, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. Your 12th century husband is going to throw you out on the street or check you into an insane asylum in the 1800s in London and pick up a brand new mistress who does everything he wants. So ladies, this is a DNA response within us. And girls, we don't have this amazing drug coursing through our veins that pushes us past hesitation and makes us freaking fearless and not even care, called testosterone. We don't have that. Well, we have a little bit of it, but we don't have that drug that just pushes you through. And then when the drug subsides, you're like, oh, wait, what was that about? We don't have that. So when we get ourselves that worked up, it takes us a minute. And gentlemen, I'm not saying it doesn't take you a minute to calm down. I'm sure it does. Yeah, just tongue in cheek, girls. There's reasons that we sit there and think that we're the bad person. And I wanted to share that story with you because it took me a minute to tell myself, Danielle, you didn't do anything. All you did was stand up for yourself. I mean, yeah, you did say what the F, and I kind of wanted to know what this lady's story was, quite honestly, but I knew what her story was. So I wanted you to know that it's normal if you're a decent, kind, good person to not feel super great about getting into a weird situation. But I am still so dang proud of myself that I did that, even though afterwards I felt a little wobbly about it, sociologically, because it was the right thing to do. I didn't do anything wrong standing up for myself, standing up for a parking spot I'd been waiting for, not just rolling over and giving it to a weirdo. So, gang, I hope this helps with some of the questions of how to navigate in this time frame, how to lead with love. And please be discerning. There are a lot of people who are pushed right over the edge right now and will do violent and crazy things. Yet you'll feel it. You'll feel that moment that you're supposed to weigh in. And when you do weigh in, it will be calm and collected and with ease. And honestly, it needs to start happening. Because too many people are just adopting selfish, insane ways of being. And if we, the people who don't have, if we, the people don't have the strength to stand up as a firewall for love, then when I look down the road in 5-10 years, we are in chaos in the United States. So do your part now. Let's all just play a little bit of a part. I'm not asking you to be the police or a Karen. I'm just asking you to do the right thing. If the right thing calls you to do it, lead with love and do it. And I will see you next podcast.